I will call this Tigard City Council and Town Center Development Agency meeting to order. City Recorder Krieger, please call roll.
Council President Hu,
Here.
Mayor Lube,
Here.
Youth Councillor Nog,
Here.
Councillor Shaw,
Here.
Councillor Singh,
Here.
Councillor Wolf.
Here. Thank you. If you will join me and stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you. City staff or City Council, any non-agenda items to add to the agenda today?
None for us, Mayor.
Okay. All right. Seeing none, we will move on to proclamations and recognitions, and I would like to invite up former Representative Margaret Doherty for the Gun Violence Awareness Day proclamation. If you will turn on the microphone, it'll turn green. You just have to, yeah. Oh, press the button. There we go. Thank you.
It's ready on. It's ready to go.
Ready to go.
Okay. Thank you, Mary Lube and City Council members. It's we're so glad that we're here, and we are so glad that tonight we'll be having a proclamation for the June 2nd Gun Violence Awareness Day. For the record, I'm Margaret Doherty. I'm a citizen of Tigard, live over in the Cook Park neighborhood. Tigard will be joining hundreds of cities nationwide in this movement, including Tualatin and Lake Oswego. To put gun violence in context, here in Oregon, in an average year, 544 people die and 617 are wounded by guns. Oregon has the 34th highest rate of gun violence in the United States. Guns are the second leading cause of death among children and teens in Oregon, with an average of 31 children and teens die by guns every year, of which 63% of these deaths are suicides and 31% are homicides. In the United States, 35% of all gun deaths among children and teens are suicides and 60 are homicides. On January 21st, 2013, Haida Pendleton marched in President Obama's second inaugural parade. 1 week later, she was shot and killed on a playground in Chicago. Soon after this tragedy, her childhood friends decided to commemorate her life by wearing orange, the color hunters wear in the woods to protect themselves and others. Wear Orange began on June 2nd, 2015, what would have been Haida's 18th birthday. Since then, Wear Orange has expanded to a period of 3 days each year: National Gun Violence Awareness Day, the first Friday of June, and Wear Orange Weekend, the accompanying weekend. This year, Wear Orange will take place from June 2nd to 4th to 2023. Please join us by including orange in your wardrobe during this time. And if you'd like to become involved in the Tigard chapter of Moms Demand Action, please text JOIN to 64433. Thank you very much for the proclamation. We are very honored to have you as a council do this. Thank you.
Thank you so much for visiting us and speaking on gun violence in our community. As a proud member of Moms Demand Action, I look forward to the day that we don't have to have this proclamation.
Thank you very much.
Yep. Our next, our next item on the agenda today is our Pride Month proclamation, and I'd like to bring up Library Volunteer Coordinator Violet Rogers-Schultz to give the staff report. Welcome.
Hi, Mayor, council members. I won't take up too much of your time. I just want to thank you all for considering this proclamation in honor of Pride Month, June 2023. and take a moment to read some of the words that our employee affinity group had worked on to ask all of you to declare June Pride Month here in Tigard. June is celebrated as Pride Month nationwide to commemorate the Stonewall Uprising in New York, which is considered the beginning of the LGBTQIA+ civil rights movement. And whereas Tigard is a community that includes and values its lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer, questioning, intersex, asexual, and two-spirit individuals. And Tigard's LGBTQ+ community is diverse, an essential part of our city, whose members contribute to the widespread academic, economic, artistic, political, and social spheres within and around the Tigard community. Pride Month in Tigard is meant to raise awareness of the prejudice and discrimination still facing members of the queer community, and honor their power and perseverance in fighting discrimination in all of its forms. Community members whose gender identity or sexual orientation intersects with race, ethnicity, ability, gender, or religion experience additional stigma and discrimination. And everyone is entitled to equal rights, freely granted to all Americans, inclusive of gender identity and sexual orientation. I'd like us to ask that our city will stand up to discriminatory actions and harmful speech, and the valuable contributions made by Tigard's LGBTQIA community to promote innovation and positive change with lasting effects within our city. And in partnership with the Tigard-Tualatin School District, the City of Tigard would celebrate Pride with a community celebration and parade on June 10th. We hope that the city will acknowledge and affirm queer love with waive municipal court fees for all LGBTQIA wedding ceremonies performed during the month of June. And the city is committed to creating safe spaces for the community with Pride programs at the Tigard Public Library. Thank you all.
Thank you so much, and it was my honor to declare June Pride Month.
Thank you.
Okay, the next item on our agenda is public comment tonight. If you'd like to call to get in the queue, please dial in now. That phone number is 503-966-4101. Anyone present wanting to comment, this is general public comment, not on any agenda items. You can sign up at the front of the room, or looks like we have an individual. And anyone wishing to comment by phone for the legislative public hearing on the city's response to House Bill 3115 should call in at the beginning of agenda item number 4. And I will repeat that phone number again there. So we will do the follow-up to previous public comment with Assistant City Manager Nyland. Welcome.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Kathy Nyland. I am the Assistant City Manager of Engagement and Innovation. And we did have one public comment from last week's council meeting. It was a written comment, and this individual had commented the week before. He was providing comment about time, place, manner, asking that additional streets be added to the ordinance. And my fun fact for this evening is really just a thank you. I want to thank everyone who's in the audience tonight. I know we are all busy, so I appreciate everyone taking the time to come here and add your voice to this conversation. Thank you. That's my report.
Thank you. Next item on the agenda is we have the Tigard High School envoy, Kayla, come here to give an update on the Tigard High School events. Welcome. How did last week go?
Last week went good.
Good.
Okay, so in terms of the
Oh, can you, yes, it's on the, thank you.
Thank you. Sorry.
Perfect.
The junior class put on prom last month, which had a lot of students in attendance, and the sophomore class put on a kickball tournament on Friday. And currently, the activities committee is working on planning Tigard Fest, which will be an outdoor festival for Tigard High students with lots of games and food. In terms of sports, baseball and softball both won their playoff games yesterday, which was super exciting, and they're headed on to the second round, which will be tomorrow. Girls track got first place at districts, and both track teams are headed to Eugene to compete at Hayward Field this weekend. And boys golf placed second in the state, and Miles Lukowski and Avery Zwick placed in the top 50 in girls golf state. In terms of the arts, the theater program just finished its last showing of Charlotte's Web this weekend, and Tigard Band and Orchestra have their end-of-the-year concerts tonight. In terms of service, National Honor Society had its last blood drive with the American Red Cross last Wednesday at Rise Church. And in general, the countdown to the end of school has begun. Seniors' last day is the 7th, with graduation on June 9th, and the rest of the school gets out on Thursday the 15th. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much. You sound very busy as usual. Does anybody have any questions or comments? No? All right. Have a wonderful evening.
You too.
We did have 2 written comments that made it in yesterday by noon. The first was from Randall Yesmount, and he was commenting regarding affordable housing presentation and planned policy, urging council to implement rent control in Tigard to address the escalating rent crisis. The second person was Kendra Smith, and reaching out in support of Oregon's rent control bill as a crucial step towards towards addressing ongoing housing affordability. Was there any additional written comments, City Recorder Krager?
No, there were not.
Okay, thank you so much. We do have one person who signed up to speak in person for general public comment today, and that is Randall Yesmount. If you'd like to come up, I hope I pronounced your name correctly. Excellent. The microphone is already turned on, so please come on up. You have 2 minutes.
Wonderful. Thank you for the opportunity to speak here. I appreciate it. This is my first time attending a city council meeting, so forgive me if I've signed up for comments in the wrong section. I was looking to comment specifically on affordable housing, but I'll take this opportunity and the floor to do so.
Okay.
Let me open by saying that I appreciate the continued work that is being done to provide additional housing for residents of Tigard. This is an important component in addressing the housing crisis in our town, but should not be the extent of our efforts. Today, I sit before you as a concerned citizen, representing over 1/3 of Tigard residents who are renters. The rising cost of rent in our city has reached a critical level, and it is imperative that we address this issue with urgency. Over the years, we have witnessed a significant increase in rental prices. Since 2013, the average rent for a 3-bedroom home in Washington County has risen by approximately 36.9%. This trend does not align with changes to compensation and is not sustainable. It has placed a heavy burden on many hardworking individuals and families in our community. Looking ahead, without appropriate rent control measures, the situation will only worsen. Projections based on this year's maximum rent increase of 14.6% paint a bleak picture. We could see the rent for a 3-bedroom home skyrocket to an alarming $4,522 within a decade, a staggering 145% increase from current rates. Such an exponential rise would only exacerbate the already challenging housing affordability crisis we face. It is evident that decisive action is required to protect our residents. To provide immediate support to our community, I urge the Tigard City Council to consider implementing rent control measures mirroring those found in the successful Portland Renter Additional Protections, also known as Ordinance 30.01.085. By doing so, we can mitigate the massive rise in rental costs and provide more stability and security to our residents. In conclusion, the rent crisis in Tigard demands immediate attention. With over 1/3 of those residents being renters, we have a responsibility to act swiftly and protect the rights and well-being of our community. By implementing these measures, it is my hope that, alongside provisions for landlord compensation for tenants who are displaced, we can create a fair and equitable housing landscape, one where individuals and families can thrive without the constant fear of being priced out of their homes. Thank you for the opportunity to speak here today.
Thank you for your comments. Network Administrator Thornburg, are there any phone callers in the queue or any requests to comment by video today?
There are no current calls in the queue, and there are no video testimony.
Did you say no calls in the queue? I apologize.
Correct, there are no calls in queue.
Okay, thank you so much. We will move on to our next item on the agenda, which is the legislative public hearing on House Bill 3115, Response Ordinance. I will open the public hearing. Anyone who wants to testify by phone, please do call in now, and also on video. The phone number to call in is 503-966-4101. And we have City Attorney Rahala and Program Manager Azell to give the staff report.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I am Kim Ezel, Program Manager of Strategic Initiatives, and I'm here to talk to you again this evening about an ordinance regarding camping and time, place, manner in the city of Tigard. Shelby Rojas.
Can I just pause to check to make sure, can everyone hear her? Just, no? Can you speak a little closer to the mic?
Yes. There it is. Can you hear me now?
Okay.
Speaking
Thank
up.
you.
Thank you. Yes. So when we came and spoke before you last 2 weeks ago, we received some direction from the council regarding the ordinance. We've made 2 changes based on your direction and further input from the Chamber of Commerce. We've added a restriction on vision clearance around to protect citizens from harm from vehicles, as well as expanded the number of streets in downtown where camping would be prohibited to include Commercial Street and Tigard Street between Main Street and Tiedemann Avenue. We've also done some more public engagement, including visiting both the Committee for Community Engagement and the Community Houselessness and Assessment and Response team meetings. The Committee for Community Engagement asked a lot of great questions. We had a really nice discussion. They especially expressed concern about children walking to school and how houseless camping may affect them. And they were also expressed concern about 36 inches of ADA walking space maybe not being enough on the sidewalk. We had already considered those, and we had talked about those during our previous council meeting as well. The Community Houselessness Assessment and Response team meeting was again a really great discussion. Huge thank you to that group for coming together every month to provide feedback on the city's houselessness response. This group was very solution oriented, and we spent most of our time in our discussion talking about the implementation of time, place, and manner, specifically how the city might be able to support providing storage options, electricity, public restrooms, etc. We are moving forward with potential partnerships with both the chamber, local businesses, and our community service providers to address all of those needs for our houseless community. Happy to answer any questions about the ordinance that is before you tonight.
Thank you. Do you have questions specific?
The ordinance, I'm currently looking at it. One of the things is I'm still looking through everything, so if it's in the document, my apologies. But there was an aspect to the ordinance that the intent of this ordinance is to enhance livability. Are there any specific markers or quantitative ways that you're measuring improvement in livability?
One of the chief goals of the ordinance, and a lot of the restrictions that are in the ordinance have to do with reducing the harm from vehicles on anyone in our houseless community. So that would be a measurement of livability, specifically safety for individuals in our community.
Yeah, Council President Hu?
So the city of Beaverton is unique that they're considering a ban on drug use. So So not a lot of cities, including us, are not doing that. So I'm just wondering if that's because that's going to create a problem with Measure 110 with enforcement.
Yes, absolutely. We think that is part of a larger policy discussion that the city can take on, and we're happy to have that conversation, but we think that that is separate from the houselessness and the camping ordinance and would require a lot of coordination around Measure 110.
Okay. Seeing no additional questions, we will move on to public testimony. We didn't receive any written public comments by noon on Monday specific to this agenda item. Network Administrator Thornburg, are there any callers in the queue to testify on this item?
Not at this time.
Okay. So we will move on to in-person public comment, and the first person we have is Caleb Peterson. Please come on up. And you have 2 minutes if you just want to turn the button on. There we go.
Hi. Tonight we have the privilege of being joined by several brave members from our unhoused community. It is important to recognize that until now, no one has asked or taken their voices into consideration during this process. Tonight, we have the opportunity to listen to their voices, to take their stories seriously, and to recognize the profound effects that this ordinance will have on them. I sincerely hope that their presence here tonight serves as a reminder of the human faces behind these policies. Criminalizing poverty has never been an effective solution nor a step forward in society. Instead of addressing the root causes of housing insecurity, this ordinance only perpetuates the cycle of displacement and further marginalizes people experiencing homelessness. I find this ordinance to be dangerous and unjust because it ignores their health and safety. How can you justify the ban on propane heaters? What's the longest you've gone without heating your own homes? It's a discomfort we wouldn't wish upon anyone, yet we are contemplating restricting access to a crucial heat source for people who have nowhere to sleep but outside, even during nights when it gets below freezing. Mayor Lube, I implore you to reflect on the very real impacts this ordinance will have on the most vulnerable members of society. This ordinance could be used to justify a sweep without a moment's notice. The solutions lie in a commitment to creating affordable housing, investing in mental health resources, and fostering a society where everyone has the opportunity to thrive. The focus should be on providing house keys, not handcuffs. Together, we can build a community where the rights and dignity of every individual are protected and where no one is left without a place to call home. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Peterson. Next individual is Laura Parks.
Orange and white.
Welcome, Ms. Parks.
Well, oh, thank you. Thank you so much. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
So I just had one comment. I read through this, and the one thing that stuck out in my heart and mind is, I've been a resident of Washington County for 20 years. I've worked in Tigard and a resident of Clatsop County for all the other years before that. So this is my home area. But where it talks about the camps tents need to be taken down. I don't remember the exact time, 9 a.m. to 7 p.m. or 7 a.m. to 9 p.m. And I just couldn't help thinking about all the people that have jobs, I don't know the numbers, that work graveyard shift, and they need to sleep during the day. And I just wanted to make that comment for awareness, and you know, that is something that does exist. So that's all I have to say. Thank you so much.
Thank you for your Thank you for your testimony, Ms. Parks. Next individual, we have Anne Marie Ledesma. Please come on up. Welcome.
Thank you. I'm here today just to advocate for the homeless. I'm concerned about the ordinance. I see lots of issues that are valid, but where are these people going to go? There's outreach out there in the shelters. Are there places that are going to be able to house these people? I've received housing. I used to be homeless. It's very difficult to go through. You can't carry your house on your back every day while you look for work and try to survive. So I really hope that you can make some amendments to this ordinance to protect these people. And that's all I have to say. Thank you.
You did great. Thank you. Next individual we have Aisling O. Welcome.
I just wanted to say that I've been homeless for like 6 months, and I just felt like I mean, they have shelters in different areas, but in Tigard they only have the one that I've heard of, and I just feel like I don't know. Like, I'm on a wait list for HUD, but I was just thinking about like the keeping warm during the winter. I don't know what people would do. I was just worried about that, but that was all. Thank you.
Thank you, Aisling. Next individual we have is James Black. Please come on up, Mr. Black.
Hello.
Welcome.
I've been homeless since June of 22 after a debilitating injury ended as a successful 20-year career. I live a sober life. I am mentally stable, but I just can't afford the inflated rents. Anyone could end up in circumstances that cause homelessness. Anyone. Imagine if it were you. All the unhoused in this city are just fellow humans trying to get by in a world that kicked them a little too hard, a little too often. Being homeless is exhausting. Literally everything necessary to get through the day takes extra energy and effort, on top of which an overwhelming feeling of vulnerability prevents good restorative sleep. It's exhausting. Packing down and setting up daily would be an enormous hardship for people who are already exhausted from the rigors of homelessness, people who are sleeping in tents out of sheer desperation to begin with. Having a camp set up is a very minimal aspect of stability. Before burdening those vulnerable in our community with the proposed prohibitions, we need real solutions in place. Where do you expect people to go? Honestly, where? If you tell people where they can't camp, it's only fair to tell them where they can. The most recent numbers estimated 5,000 homeless in Washington County. If you cannot provide shelter for transitional housing for those in need, in the very least, provide places to camp. The concerns around homeless camping are understandable, namely unsightliness, sanitation, safety. So set up legit campgrounds that are monitored by a camp host. Unemployed homeless persons could be hired to host and monitor camps. Setting up organized camping at designated public properties would take minimal resources, and until other solutions are in place, it's the responsible and humanitarian thing to do. I've seen the figures of the federal funding provided for the homeless crisis here. Monetary resources are definitely not an issue. The way I see it, local governments contributed to this crisis by allowing overdevelopment and housing market takeover by billionaire investment companies, and by not foreseeing this crisis and averting it with rent control. It's up to local governments to step up and protect its most vulnerable citizens rather than burden their lives more by trying to make them live unseen.
Thank you, Mr. Black. Next individual we have is Falk Rudolph. Please come on up, Mr. Rudolph.
Good evening.
Welcome.
Thank you. So, just a quick question. Can everybody hear me?
Can everyone hear? Yes. Okay.
Okay, just a quick question. So it says here on the background information as discussed at the May 9th council meeting, enhanced the livability, including health and safety for all community members. Does that include homeless people, community members? Question.
Typically during public comment, we just receive information. It doesn't turn into a conversation.
Okay. All right, then I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Okay. That's it. That's all I had.
Thank you. Okay. Next individual we have is Eric Altinenza? Oh. Thank you. Welcome.
Good afternoon, members of Tigard City Council. Firstly, I would like to inquire about the reasoning behind the selected time restrictions from 9 a.m. to 7 p.m. What happens to the shelter of someone who has to leave their campsite in the middle of the night if they need to leave for a medical emergency? What happens in seasons of extreme weather, such as during winter, when we have snowfall during the daytime? Where do unhoused people that work overnight get to rest during the day? Could the council elaborate on the enforcement strategies to be employed to ensure compliance with these time restrictions? Furthermore, the prohibition of camping in certain locations such as city parks, parking lots, and specific streets should be carefully evaluated. What alternative areas will be designated for camping within the city to accommodate the needs of the houseless community? Can you provide a clear definition of sensitive lands and a detailed explanation of how vision clearance areas will be defined and enforced? I believe it's also important to consider the circumstances of individuals with mobility impairments who may require additional space or modifications for their camping setup. Are there provisions in place to address their needs adequately? Additionally, it would be valuable to explore options for providing heating during cold weather for campsites. How does the city plan to enforce measures for restrictions and provisions should be clarified? How will compliance with campsite size and spacing limitations be ensured? Has waste management and sanitation areas been considered to prevent the accumulation of trash, hazardous materials, or feces? Are there plans to provide public restrooms or waste disposal facilities near camping areas, presumably that they're set up? Lastly, I urge the council to consider the evaluation impact of this ordinance. How will its effectiveness be measured? Are there metrics or benchmarks in place to assess its impact on the houseless community and overall community livability? What does success look like with HB 3115? In conclusion, I respectfully request the City Council to thoroughly deliberate upon these concerns and questions before making a final decision on this ordinance. It is vital that we approach this issue with empathy, fairness, and a comprehensive understanding of its implications. Thank you for your attention to these matters of utmost importance to our community.
Thank you. Our next individual signed up is Casey Roseland. Casey Roseland? Okay, thank you. Our next individual is Lisa Tooch. Teutsch. Welcome.
Hello. I'm a volunteer at Just Compassion, and I'm also on the Chiefs Advisory Panel. And when we discussed the Chiefs Advisory Panel, I think it took a while for it to sink in for me what this really was. And some of it makes sense. Other parts of it don't really for me.
Can you scoot forward just a little bit? I'm not sure they can.
I don't understand. It's hard to figure how people are going to break camp every day. One of the things I think about is most of us here have known someone who has mental health issues, had them ourselves, or had depression. And for someone who's depressed, just getting out of bed in the morning isn't going to happen some days. So getting out of their tent can't happen for some of those peeps. And for them, they need to stay, they can't break camp every day. And for most of us who are campers, we don't break camp every day. So I don't think that's a reasonable thing. It's dark by 4:30 in winter. People need to be able to set up camp earlier than that. If they break camp every day, they've got all their stuff with them. Where are they going to store that? If you're walking around with all your stuff, you're a target for predators. And how are you going to apply for jobs? How are you going to go to work? How are you going to do the things that they need to do to try to progress out of homelessness? Because most folks don't want to be homeless. I was concerned that the way it's worded, there's a whole lot of places that you can't camp. It's really not clear where you can. And unfortunately, most of the places that you can't camp a lot of the places you can't camp are places where they're camping right now. So there's a problem there. Where can you camp? And I get it that none of us have a place that springs to mind. But and I think it's been said already, places to put garbage, places to go to the bathroom, porta potties and garbage cans will solve a lot of problems. Nobody's trying to make a mess. It happens because there aren't if we make it easy for people to not make messes, they won't. Not usually. So I think that was all that I had. Yeah. Thank you very much. I'm a volunteer at Just Compassion. It's a wonderful place, and it really helps folks. It's a wonderful place to be, and people enjoy it there. So, and yeah. And people are here because they wanted to be and wanted to come as a community.
Thank you for being here. Our next individual is Alex Davis. Welcome, Ms. Davis.
Thank you. So out of what I've heard so far is everyone's pretty much brought up points that I was going to bring up already. I guess the main concern I'm hearing about is just the mess making and all that. But I don't know if you guys have ever been like to a sweep before, like when the cops come and they take everything or whatever and they clean up that mess. A lot of the times that mess isn't like a mess to begin with. It is by the time they get it out of the campsites and stuff, but that's actually people's homes. Like, I've watched them take people's homes and just throw it away, throw everything away. It's really crappy. I've watched them do it multiple times, multiple people. So, I mean, like, to them it may be garbage, but to other people it's not. It's everything they've got. So, I mean, a lot of the mess that you guys are seeing as a mess is just we don't have a place to put it. We don't have anywhere to put it to take it where it's not going to be with us or not going to be like where we know it's safe. And like I said, I mean, I've seen sweeps, and I mean, like, I've seen the big sweeps, the little sweeps, all of them, all the above, and it sucks. It really sucks. I know that I'm pregnant. I can't carry stuff on my back all the time from 7 a.m. to 9 p.m. or vice versa, sorry. Like, that just won't work. And I mean, I've got housing coming. Like, we've already got approved and everything, but like, we still have to wait on the system. There's no way for us to move forward. We've done everything we can on our part. But yeah, no, I think everyone else has covered just about everything else. The waste matter and anything like that is it's bathrooms, just porta potties or, like they said, garbage cans. Most people that I know, they do clean up their mess. So, but that's, I think, all I've got to say today. Thank you.
Good job, Alex. Thank you, Ms. Davis, and thank you to everybody for your public comments. That is all, everybody who was signed up for public comment, and I'd like to welcome, sorry for a moment, City Attorney Rahala and Program Manager Azal to give a response to the testimony provided.
Good evening, Program Manager Kim Ezell. First, I just want to thank all of our community members for giving such powerful testimony and speaking to you tonight. I do want to say that we are investing heavily in creating more housing here in Tigard and throughout Washington County. City Council did recently approve $1 million to go towards the Quality Inn purchase by Family Promise of Tualatin Valley, which is going to increase our family shelter. We're also, Washington County is also investing in the expansion of Just Compassion, which is fantastic, as well as 8 other shelters throughout Washington County, 2 pallet shelters in Greater Washington County, and we are actively looking for other sites for other pallet shelters as well as safe lots for vehicle camping. Also wanted to say that we are actively working on establishing additional porta potties, trash, storage options, and access to electricity for our houseless community as part of our implementation of an ordinance. And to also offer an option that Washington County does have a 5-day model that they are using in their ordinance, which is another option and ultimately a policy question for council under the time, place, and manner. Thank you.
Thank you, Program Manager Azal. I will close the public hearing, and we will move on to council consideration of Ordinance 23-03. I'd like to start with if there are any additional questions that any of the testimony, the comments brought up.
Yeah. Okay, so I do have a list of things. I guess these could be comments, but these could also be considered as questions. A lot of the numbers that I saw within the ordinance did seem kind of arbitrary. For example, there was a 20 feet limitation between the two campsites. I think that was section 9. There are also time regulations. That was an interesting thing, especially considering.
Let's take them one at a time. Program Manager Zell, can you come back up? Some of, and I think some of this, I know that you weren't at the last meeting where we discussed this, but we went through some of this. Happy to ask Program Manager Zell to go through it again. So maybe if we can start with your first question.
Okay, so I can try to pull up the section, but there was a section that said that there was a 20 feet required gap between campsites. I was wondering why it was 20 feet.
Yes, so it is a 12 by 12 foot restriction on the footprint of a camp, and then a 20 foot between camps. They go together, and that is in an effort to balance both trying to keep family units together while also preventing large encampments from forming. It is kind of looking at some of the areas where camping would be not prohibited based on this ordinance. Making it 20 feet is a amount that is fairly easy to judge without being so restrictive that it prohibits camping on like an entire block or just allows one tent camper on an entire block. So it would allow multiple folks to camp in one area while not being so close together to constitute a large encampment.
My second question was regarding D8, where it says a person without available shelter may not dig or excavate terrace or soil.
Yes, this is an effort to protect public infrastructure, and we're not allowing establish of permanent camps, so that is why no digging or excavating.
Okay. So one of the things for the time regulation, when there was the consideration of 9 a.m. to 7 p.m., was there a consideration for youth that may be homeless and have to go to school during those times and have to return to somewhere after?
I'm sorry, I don't think I understand the question.
So for the, was wondering if there was like conversations with homeless youth that may have to come back to a campsite between the hours of 9 a.m. and 7 p.m.
Right, so campsites in this ordinance would be required to be broken down between 9 a.m. and 7 p.m. So there would not be a campsite to return to, and then a campsite could be reestablished at 7 p.m. Part of the reasoning behind the different times, both the morning time and the evening time, is when other services are available. The library is open between 6 p.m. and 8 p.m. depending on the day, and then services are also available in the morning starting at 9 a.m.
My second one was about D6, where it says, my question is like, where should trash be discarded publicly? Like, will there be more public trash cans available? If so, how will people know about it?
Yes, so we're looking at some of the areas where camping would not be prohibited and establishing additional bathrooms, trash receptacles, working to establish storage as well as access to electricity.
Sorry, I have so many questions, my bad. But for city parking lots, I was interested, there are a lot of private parking lots that don't allow overnight parking. Why are city parking lots not being allowed as a place for overnight parking?
So this ordinance only applies to tent camping. It does not apply to vehicle camping. We are not allowing tent camping in city parking lots because vehicles and people don't mix, and we think it's a safety hazard.
Okay. And the second one is I had a chance to look at the ordinance map. Why are, like, there were a lot of places highlighted where people could not camp, and there were 2 places that could. Area-wise, those 2 places looked drastically smaller than the rest of the highlighted places. Is there a reason why?
There are no areas on the map that show where people are allowed to camp. All of the shaded areas are where folks are prohibited from camping.
I think I was referring to the blue shaded areas.
The blue shaded areas are where household services are available, and there is a 500-foot buffer in this ordinance that would prohibit camping within 500 feet of the household services areas.
Okay, thank you for the clarification.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you for your questions. Council President Hu?
Yeah, I sort of asked this question last time, but I want to follow up on how would houseless people keep warm without fire? What are they doing now?
Yeah, that is a concern. So propane gas heating as well, but folks are also keeping warm through distribution of cold weather gear. So there are several providers in our community, and we're looking at expanding and duplicating on that effort. We're already talking to St. Vincent de Paul about expanding that to provide more gloves, hand warmers, warmer tents, sleeping bags, and other cold weather gear.
So no open flames are being used right now?
Oh, open flames are being used right now.
Okay, and do we have a lot of accidents or?
I'll turn it over to City Attorney Rahala. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. So this, again, like we talked about last time, is a balance. So we have had fires at some campsite, and so this consideration was really out of foresight for planning for fire danger. So ultimately, it is a policy decision of council, but that was the risk that we were trying to balance, is the safety issues to the campers themselves and the fire danger risk, especially in our sensitive lands. But absolutely, it is a potential source of heat.
But there is one city that is not banning open fire, right? Cornelius? Or
Correct. Cornelius had a very limited manner section and did not ban open flame, at least not in that ordinance. They may have a ban on open flame somewhere else in their city code that I'm not aware of.
Okay. And another question, I'm struggling with this. One person brought up the point of how if of houseless individuals working at night, where are they going to sleep in the daytime? Are the shelters opening in the daytime for them?
Just Compassion does operate a day center, but it is not open necessarily for folks to sleep. And so that is a limited option and is a consideration.
That's all I have for now. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Singh, any questions?
I just have a comment. Yeah. So I just want to start by saying that I stand with the houseless and unhoused people of Tigard and with them to develop a solution. I think we need to hear from them and continue to hear from them and their stories. Houseless people did not end up unhoused by choice, nor do many unhoused folks desire to stay on the streets forever. They do not wish to be unlawful, nor can many afford the fines that would be issued to them. Oregon cities regularly enact and enforce laws that criminalize people for being unhoused, and doing so is both cruel and counterproductive. These laws punish and dehumanize people who are already vulnerable and struggling. Furthermore, this approach does nothing to address the causes of homelessness. Criminalizing poverty and homelessness does nothing to address the root causes of homelessness, like lack of affordable housing, unemployment, and insufficient social services. It wastes resources, throwing revenue at expensive law enforcement and exposing governments to liability. We need to shift our approach to homelessness from punishment to prevention and decriminalize life-sustaining activities and redirect resources from enforcement to activities that address root causes of homelessness and poverty. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Singh. Program Manager Azell, I know, I think there were some general comments, and I think it would be helpful to maybe talk about how we ended up here, and that this is in compliance to the House bill and not something that necessarily the Tigard City Council decided to enact. And so would you be able to, or perhaps City Attorney Rahala, how did we end up here?
Absolutely. So in 2018, the Ninth Circuit decided the case of Martin v. Boise, and that was the first case to rule on the constitutionality of ordinances banning camping on public property. There was a subsequent case out of Oregon that was also decided by the Ninth Circuit, Blake v. Grants Pass, also known as Johnson v. Grants Pass. Then in 2001, the Oregon legislature passed House Bill 3115, which basically codified the Boise decision. So House Bill 3115 said that if a local government is going to regulate camping, that the ordinance must be objectively reasonable in terms of time, place, and manner. And so what we are trying to do is not criminalize the act of camping that is specifically prohibited by Oregon statute and case law. What we are trying to do is to find that objectively reasonable time, place, manner regulation that, as we discussed, is a balance between all the competing interests, including the community members experiencing houselessness as well as housed community members. So that's the legal context for how we got here.
Thank you. I appreciate that background. I see Councillor Wolf.
Thank you, Mary Lou. I think I just have more of a comment than a follow-up question. I first, again, also want to just really appreciate all of those that came this evening to speak and give their feedback during public comment. I also want to just acknowledge the work that City Attorney Rajala and Strategic Manager Ezell have done to try to listen, to try to balance, look at the law, and deeply understand the needs of those in our community that are currently seeking shelter, and that this is not seeking to criminalize, and certainly try to provide the supports needed. And to my fellow council members and to Mayor Lube, as we try to figure out what's best for our community and not leave anyone behind. And so I appreciate the conversations this evening, and recognize the challenges. And I just wonder, as we dive into this, clearly we're creating an ordinance, but that doesn't mean that we aren't going to check back in, right? Back to Youth Representative Nashiki asking, what are those measurements? How are we doing? So I think this is going to be an ongoing conversation of what's working in our city and how are we using those county and statewide investments. To Councillor Singh's feedback, I do think there are heavy investments in that longer term. How are we solving these problems? And so it's a balancing act to do all these pieces simultaneously, recognizing the goals are going to have different kind of crossing the finish line, if you will, which I know this is a very long-term problem. So I just really appreciated everyone's comments this evening, and just weighs very heavily. And so I appreciate the opportunity just to share my thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Shaw.
Thank you, Mayor, and hopefully my connection is suffice. Just also want to say thank you to our fellow councilors, to Strategic Manager Ezell, and to City Attorney Rajala for all the work that each one of you have done, in us collectively, and for our community members who've attended, and those who sit on the chart, and many other hours of our both community members, but also our strategic partners, such as Family Promise. But it's a very difficult situation. I think legally we're in the position we are in. I think this is the best compromise we've come to, and I agree with Councillor Wolf that it'll be an ongoing, and there won't be any hard and fast decisions that we can't later on examine, but just want to echo the thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you. Given those comments, yes, City Attorney Rajala.
Thank you. So in response to those last two comments, I did just want to add that though House Bill 3115 requires compliance by July 1st of this year, absolutely this is going to be an evolving conversation, and we will come back and revisit this conversation as we gain additional evidence of the impacts in our community, as case law continues to evolve, as legislation continues to evolve. So absolutely what you're deciding tonight is not the set in stone final answer. It will continue to be evaluated.
Thank you for those comments. Yeah, Council President Hu.
I also want to add that unlike all other jurisdictions in our county, we do allow camping on our city property except the parking lot. So I think overall we're the most compassionate city, and I do hope that this is not the only tool in our toolbox that we have, and I hope not, for dealing with this crisis. And thank you all for your hard work on this. And I'm really struggling with this, but I understand that this is the best solution we have so far for our community. So thank you.
Thank you. Any additional questions or comments? Youth Councilor Nog.
Okay. I have two questions. One of them I'm just having a little bit of trouble. Is a misdemeanor worse than an infraction?
Yes.
Okay. So one of the, actually this is a three-part question. How many times have people been charged for the littering misdemeanor in Tigard? Like, how often is that cited?
I don't know if Chief McAlpine would like to address that. I have no idea. It's not frequent.
Not at all. Not in the context of what you're talking about here.
Okay.
Opposed to somebody who we see driving throws out.
Can somebody give her a mic, just because there's counselors online who can't hear you? Thank you.
Hi there. No, to answer your question, I think in the intent that you're asking about this, we don't. It's more, if we're going to do the littering, it's going to be the person that we see throwing something out the window, totally being, discarding our community. But when we do the encampment cleanups and stuff, like, nobody's cited for that, and those are incurred. So that's the difference.
Okay. So one of the things that I noticed is that a person without available shelter may not accumulate, discard, or leave behind anything on a campsite, any rubbish, trash, garbage, debris, or any other refuse. But the violation of this chapter, I think, is punishable by a Class 3 civil infraction, arrest for criminal trespass in the second degree, and citation in lieu of arrest for criminal trespass. I'm interested as to why the punishment for that differs from, like, normal littering, because I feel like the language in Section A seems more punishable. Like, it has like a harder punishment than just littering. But I could be wrong. I was just interested.
So I'm not sure I understand your question. A civil infraction is a lesser offense than a misdemeanor.
Is the arrest for criminal is that what it would also be considered, like arrest for criminal trespass in the second degree, or citation in lieu of arrest? Would that be worse or than a misdemeanor?
So those would be separate offenses.
Okay.
So trespass is a separate offense. So there would not be a trespass arrest or warrant issued for any of the offenses other than trespass.
Okay. It's just, I felt like it was a little interesting that I don't know how often the littering, like, citation is given, but I feel like that same, like, view of, I'm forgetting the word, but like that same view of grace should be given for this as well, if we don't punish every single person that's littering.
I'm not sure I understand the question. Okay.
Any response to her statement? Okay. So I hear a lot of conversation and a lot of concern, and so the question is, how do we move forward this evening? Are we going to ask for additional changes or information? Are we comfortable moving forward with the ordinance as is, knowing that we will continue to come back and this will be an evolving conversation? So I'm looking for some guidance for our city team on how you would like to proceed. We can also go in general area if there's concerns over time and then place and manner, or just in general? Because I understand if we want to continue this conversation, but if we continue it, we need to provide solutions and direction, not just to continue it. Yes, Council President Hu.
I think the biggest concern I have is individual keeping warm in the winter time, but at the same time, I know that having an open flame is dangerous. So I don't know how to address that. That's my biggest hiccup. So that's the only thing I have. So.
Okay. I apologize. I don't know which of you raised your hand first, so we will go to Councillor Shaw.
I believe it was Councillor Wolf, but I'm happy to go ahead and start. I think we all recognize this is a very difficult challenge. I think staff has done an exceptional job weighing the different legal complications and the needs of both the community and business. And I'm thankful and heartful that this isn't going to be set in stone, that we get the ability to revise as it goes. So Mayor, to your point, I would make a motion to move to approve ordinance number 23-03.
The ordinance has been moved. Is there a second?
I will second it.
Okay. And we will go ahead and start discussion on the motion at hand. Councillor Wolf, would you like to make a comment based on the motion?
Thank you, Mayor Liu. Yes, I guess, my comment would only be, I appreciate Council President Hu's question. And I think as we think about heading into the summer months where fires could become a greater hazard, clearly we're coming off a wet spring, but that likely won't stay with us. And this idea of revisiting how things are going, maybe that conversation is in September or August, and we reflect on where we are on some of those challenges. So I support the motion, and that was just my wondering or thinking about Council Presidents Hu concern, because I think it's more than fair, but leverage the summer months that we're seeing. And I know that it's not that simple. I just really want to acknowledge how incredibly hard this conversation is for those that are thinking about camping in the evening time. But so I would support the motion. So thank you.
Thank you. Comments? Councillor Singh?
Yeah, I just want to uplift, or elevate a lot of what the community members were saying about time as well, specifically in the winter time. I'm just concerned about, folks not being able to find a place to sleep and having their house swept. So I think the rationale for keeping the time was just because of keeping things standard across jurisdictions, and I don't know if that's a point that we can come back to as well.
I think that's certainly something that we can come back to as well, perhaps in partnership with the conversation regarding open flames. And I so want to thank everybody who's here and being vulnerable and honest about our community and how this decision is impacting you. I want all of you to know that, to me, you are our community members, and you are here and you are seen, and we do not want to erase you. We are working really hard to advocate for services and for housing in Tigard so you can have homes. Everyone deserves a home, and we are working hard to do what we can for you. But I just want to reiterate that you are members of our community, and we are vocal about that, and you are welcome here. We value you. Council President Hu?
City Attorney Rihala, if we were to put some sort of, is it okay to put some sort of sunset provision in this ordinances, so we are forced to revisit this every so often? Is that something?
So I wouldn't want to sunset it because we have to be in compliance by July 1st of this year, so I want to make sure there's no question about when it is effective. But absolutely, council could either put in the text of the ordinance or just direct staff in its motion to come back and discuss at a set time or after certain months or whatever council wishes. Easiest, I would suggest putting that in your motion, and we'll calendar it on our side to make sure to come back to you.
Okay, so I will move to amend the motion to direct the staff to insert a provision in the ordinances, so we will to revisit this ordinances every 6 months.
The amendment has been moved. Is there a second to the amendment?
I second.
Okay. The amendment has been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion on the amendment? Councillor Shaw.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Council President Hu. I'm just wondering if 6 months gets us into winter, and I'm fearful that if we had that discussion in November, it may be a little late. So I'm wondering if we could say, let's see, if it's July 1, maybe October, but just want to make sure that we don't miss that time period to address the winter months. But I appreciate the intent of Council President Hu.
Yep, I appreciate that. I think perhaps the amendment can go as stand, and we direct that the 6 months starts maybe with an August discussion. I think even waiting until October, given the length of time that we could have with questions and back and forth, by then it could be a long time and inadequate for what we're trying to do. Youth Councillor Nog?
I was going to actually say moving it up if that was possible, just because school and the only real one of the concerns that I had was the time zones, especially with homeless youth. We talked about the statistics in TTSD. There is a fair number of students in our district that are currently homeless, and I think that's important to address. And I think since summer is just starting, if we revisit this conversation in August, then that would acknowledge any possible changes that need to be made.
Yeah, and I think then doing it in fall and spring covers the major season changes, and so that would be a great interval to go with.
So can I take back my motion?
No, so I think your amendment should stay.
Okay.
And so it's literally in the ordinance that it has to be reviewed every 6 months.
Okay.
But I would just say that we would direct staff that the first review would be in August. Councillor Wolf.
Mayor Lube, thank you. I support your direction and that I think it's holding us accountable, but and staff understands what we're seeking. So I support as it stands. So thank you, Mayor Lube.
Okay. So the amendment in front of us is to review this ordinance every 6 months. And City Recorder Krieger, can you please do a roll call vote for the amendment only?
Council President Hu?
Yes.
Mayor Lube?
Yes.
Youth Councillor Nog?
Yes.
Councillor Shaw?
Yes.
Councillor Singh?
Yes.
Councillor Wolf?
Yes.
I apologize, Youth Councillor Nog. I should have started with you for an advisory vote. How would you like to? Oh, you said yes? I said yes. Okay. Okay, so the amendment has been passed by unanimous vote of the council, and so we are back to the original ordinance. Is there any further discussion on the original ordinance that now includes the amendment? Yes, Youth Councillor Nog.
I just have a quick question. If we do pass this ordinance today, will it be taking effect immediately, or will it be taking effect after on July 1st?
I believe July 1st, but I will look to City Attorney Rahala.
So the ordinance is a standard ordinance effective 30 days, so it will be June 22nd.
can we make it effective July 1st?
We can. We
I-
can. It would just, yeah, the ordinance says 30 days, so we can just amend that also.
Okay, I guess that would be a conversation for the council. Yes, Council President who?
I move to amend the ordinances so it will take effect on July 1st, 2023.
There's a motion. Is there a second on that motion, that amendment?
I second.
Okay. Is there any discussion on the amendment to make it effective July 1st, 2023? Seeing none, oh, yes, Councilor Shaw.
Yeah, just to thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Council President, who just curious if it goes into effect July 1 and review in August, will we have enough data to review in August? And maybe we just need to revisit at that time. I'm just thinking out loud.
Yeah, I believe we will specifically address heating and open flames as well as winter hours. But City Manager Reimer, do you have anything additional to add?
Nope, I was going to say the same thing. I think August is appropriate.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor.
Any additional questions or comments? Seeing none, City Recorder Krager, can you conduct a roll call vote, starting with Youth Councilor Nog for an advisory vote?
Youth Councilor Nog.
Yes.
Council President Hu.
Yes.
Mayor Lube.
Yes.
Councilor Shaw.
Yes.
Councilor Singh.
Yes.
Councilor Wolf.
Yes.
Okay. The amendment passes with unanimous vote of the council. So we will move forward to discuss the ordinance, which now has 2 amendments. This is the first time we've had 2 amendments. Working my Robert's Rules of Order skills. Is there any additional discussion on this ordinance? Okay. Seeing none, City Recorder Krager, can you conduct a roll call vote on the ordinance? Oh, please read the number and title of the ordinance.
Ordinance number 23-03, an ordinance prohibiting and regulating camping in the city of Tigard as amended.
Thank you. Will you conduct a roll call vote, starting with Youth Councilor Nog for an advisory vote, please?
Youth Councilor Nog.
Yes.
Council President Hu.
Yes.
Mayor Lube.
Yes.
Councilor Shaw.
Yes.
Councilor Singh.
Yes.
Councilor Wolf.
Yes.
The ordinance passes with the unanimous vote of the council. Thank you again for all of your conversations today and your vulnerability and your honesty. Moving on, we will convene to the Town Center Development Agency for the next agenda item. Redevelopment Manager Fairley is here to give the staff report.
Good evening. I'm Sean Farley, Redevelopment Project Manager, and I'm here tonight with Amy Siberian of Ava Tiger Development LLC and Tom Murphy, the Chair of the Town Center Advisory Commission.
Can you hold on just one moment? Is there somebody who could close those doors just so we can hear in here? Thank you, Chief.
So,
Mr. Fairley, hold on just one moment. Thank you.
no problem. Tonight, the Board of the Town Center Development Agency is requested to consider approval of the Town Center Advisory Commission's recommended $400,000 in development assistance to pay for a portion of systems development charges for AVA's 22-unit mixed-use building on Main Street in downtown Tigard. The City Center TIF plan lists development assistance as an approved program. AVA applied for the assistance and scored well on the criteria, including high-quality pedestrian-friendly design, providing equitable economic opportunities, and contributing to placemaking and local identity. Most notably, the provision of the donating of a public easement and the construction of a public viewing deck on Fano Creek. I'll turn it over to Amy now, and she's going to go through a PowerPoint, which is up there. Just say next slide when you're ready to go.
We can go to the next slide. Can we go to the next slide, please? Mayor Lou, members of council, thank you for having me tonight.
Would you mind speaking a little closer to the mic? I'm not sure those individuals who are remote with us can hear today.
Can you hear me? Fine.
We get none. Okay. Thank you.
In the interest of time, I just wanted to read a project overview of that we submitted for TIF grant. I tend to go over time with my presentation, so I promise, Sean, that I stay focused. So I'm going to read this just one paragraph to explain what the project is. The Awa Tiger Development Project originated to form a public-private partnership between the City of Tigard and Awa Tiger Development, with the brownfield revitalization initiatives to transform a local eyesore into a catalyst for urban development and a place for community gathering. Our Osteria, as our business, has proven track record of developing brownfields into thriving community spaces, receiving several accolades for community contribution. The Awa Tiger Development Project aims to replicate the success on a larger scale to become the destination for coffee lovers, casual gatherings, and relaxation by Fano Creek. In addition, this project seeks to revitalize the site into our cross-functional businesses and residence center that will catalyze Tigard Main Street's urban development vision and becomes the heart of downtown Tigard from early morning hours to midnight. With the creation of about around 30 direct jobs, increased foot traffic, and a contribution to regional economic growth and tax base, this project will immensely benefit the City of Tigard. So this is the project we have in mind. Can we go to the next slide, please? And I be fast on the other slides. When we took over this project, we were aware of several problems. First of all, it was a brownfield project that we are very familiar with developing this kind of sites. We were in a flood zone that we know there are extra costs to raise the property grade by about 5 feet to be above the FEMA 100-year flood level. So we stay above the flood level. And then also some restriction and challenges to the site restriction, basically. There was an easement that was just going through the site that limit the amount of space we can dedicate to the building. This is what we walk into. But when we start actually getting to the, after finishing the design, can we go to the next slide, please? When we started financing the project, I know COVID affected everything. We were affected by the financing as well. We had to cut one floor, the office space for this building, and reduce the size of the building to 3-story. And that was additional cost to go back to the drawing board and start all over with all the engineering design. The other problem we had, this is the first kind of big development in the main street. So there weren't a lot of infrastructure. For example, PGE didn't have the right infrastructure for us. So there was a cost between us and the PGE to provide that kind of service that building needed. But when we start the site construction, actually, we broke the ground and we started the construction with the site work. We came across another problem that is the highlight of why we are here today and asking for your help. The site was filled with unstable boulders, basically. Through my engineering work over the years, I have worked with a lot of environmental installation underground with a lot of different sites around the United States. But this site, with everything that city's done before us and everything with it, nobody expected that kind of fill material. When we started the construction or the design, requested geotechnical report, requested for 1.5 foot of scraping the topsoil and then start the construction or building foundation. But when we start scraping that 1.5, it ended up being 9 feet. And with a lot of boulders all across the site. If you go to the next slide, we can kind of look at what kind of problems. So the 1.5 foot, it ended up being 9 feet below ground, all across the site. If we go to the next slide, we actually reach the groundwater there. We removed 2,400 cubic yards of boulders. What you see in this picture is just the first row of the excavation that was along the Fano Creek. So we had mountains of these boulders removed from the site. Removing this amount of boulders from the site, it required backfilling with a stable construction products. If we go to the next slide. So we replace those boulders with about 3,300 tons of structurally sound fill material. What you see there, you can see people who work at the site at the end of that row that we excavated, and you can kind of put things in perspective, that how big and giant this kind of excavation was. And this is in the middle of the process of backfilling that row, just one row. We had many of those throughout the site. We are here, this extra excavation right at the beginning of the project site work, it added a lot of cost to what we had projected and what we have proposed to the bank. So it's about $280,000 or $230,000 was just removing the rocks and or those boulders. And as a result of this site condition, our building foundation has changed, so we had extra cost for concrete material or foundation concrete. I don't know if you have driven by the site and see what is happening there. We are past this phase, but the extra cost hasn't passed. It's stayed there for us to resolve with the bank and see how we can take care of it. If we can go to the next slide. I think these are pretty much, I just want to show this as part of what we provide for the city and this project provides. We are providing about 2,000 square foot of the public plaza, kind of publicly accessible plaza. On the west side is the plaza, and then in front of all 4 different retail spaces that it's going to be our businesses, the coffee shop, the bakery, roasting, and then the coffee cocktail bar. There's all covered spaces for our customers, and then also a lot of water features alongside the pedestrian walkway on the main street. So the project is going to be a beautiful enhancement, already beautiful Main Street. So I think this project would add a lot. The next slide, please, if you can see that. I took a picture of this project. This is just a few days ago that they started building the plaza alongside the creek. So this is kind of good news that things are moving forward and happening. But with your help and considering the TIF grant, I think we as a small business and a small developer, we are very hopeful that we can move this project and finish it on time. That actually, because of the boulders, we are about 6 weeks behind our schedule, and that's additional cost to what we endure. So with that, I just want to thank you for your time, listening to my presentation.
Good evening. Chair Lube, directors of the agency and staff. I'm Tom Murphy. I'm the chair of the Town Center Advisory Commission. Over the years, the TCAC has reviewed several applications for development assistance. To my knowledge, this is the first time that the TCAC has diverged from the staff recommendation. We didn't do that lightly. I appreciate this opportunity to explain the Commission's reasoning. In the TCAC's view, this project is crucial to the rebirth of the downtown district. It completes the restoration of a former contaminated site at a key location at the south end of Main Street. It provides much-needed residential units and street-level retail space. It creates an asset where before there was a liability. Among its other contributions to the community, it will enhance the real property tax base. This is what urban renewal is supposed to be. We want this project to succeed. In looking at AVA's application, I found it useful to think what would have happened if these subsurface conditions had been, and unstable soils, had been known from day one. Well, in that event, AVA would have included the costs of the boulder removal, the over-excavation, and the additional backfill in their estimate of their project costs. It would not have been a small number. That increase would have left AVA with the same sort of budget hole that they have now. Keep in mind that AVA started this project fully funded with no public subsidy. So in that scenario where the budget hole was discovered before ground was broken, AVA would have been eligible to submit an application for development assistance to cover that gap, just the way the other developers in the TIF district have done. And I submit that the fact that the budget gap became known after construction commenced rather than before should have no bearing upon its merit. According to the information that the TCAC looked at, $400,000 approximately equaled the hard costs incurred by AVA due to the unforeseen site conditions, with some rounding up and some allowance for the markup that goes along with those additional costs. It doesn't include much of anything for cost escalations due to the passage of time. For the other market rate projects that have received development assistance in the TIF districts, the amount has varied between $600,000 and $1 million, to my recollection. The TCAC believes that for this project, $400,000 in development assistance is proportional to the amount of assistance provided to other market rate projects, considering their size and the public benefit. Thank you.
Thank you. So before you consider the resolution that would authorize the city manager to sign a development assistance agreement, we're happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you for your presentation. Are there questions? Council President Hu?
So it's mentioned that 6 weeks behind, so what's the expected completion date now?
End of February 2024.
Okay, so this question may be direct to staff. So why is the contract effective until December 2024. It seems like if it's expected to finish February, we're giving them 8 months.
We've found in the past it's always a good idea to add a little time in case something unknown comes up with other projects that's happened. So just rather than coming back to amend a contract, just adding that time, and if it's not needed, that's great.
Okay.
And I need to add something else. The project is supposed to finish by 2024, February, end of February 2024, but the tenant improvement for the business side of it, we try to do it concurrent with what is happening, but at least a few months it would take to complete the tenant improvement part of the project.
Okay. And not building the office level, that saved quite a bit of money, I would imagine.
It would make our loan smaller.
Right.
It didn't save money, but it would reduce the amount of loan that no bank would support it.
Right. So how much did that reduce the loan approximately?
Well, the bank never really looked into the numbers we had.
Okay.
But at the time, it's probably $1 million, $1.5 million.
Okay.
Because our plan was to just build the shell of the second
Got it.
floor and have the offices come in, then build the rest of it.
All right.
So it's not really got to the point that it's getting. We just did the structural design and then we went to the bank and we never got to the final numbers.
So once you realize you don't have the finance for $1 million or $1.5 million, you just took that off, right? Is that?
Well, we actually went to the drawing board and made
Right.
it a 3-story building.
Okay.
And then hired people to basically look into the cost. And the bank worked with us step by step and help us to make the project financeable.
Okay, thank you.
And we brought about $1.8 million in soft cost from our side to make this. The bank had a limit of how much they would finance us, basically.
Got it. And Tom, one more question. Tom, so the 3 members who voted no on the dollar amount, they are all downtown business owners, is that correct?
That is correct, Director
Okay.
Hu.
All right, do you know why then future neighbors will vote a no?
I'm hesitant to speak for them. I believe from conversations that they had some overall concerns about the project, of which parking is one, probably not necessarily all. But beyond that, I really can't say.
All right, thank you.
I will just add that I think this project took off during an unfortunate time in our history, and as they were looking to build an office space, we were all working from home, and it just became an impossible scenario, I think, for any bank to support any additional office space with the vacancy rates that were going.
If I may add one more thing, you asked about we cut $1.5 million or whatever and make the project less. It also cut a revenue of that office space if it was feasible. So we were looking for that office space to pay for the extra loan.
Mr. Fairley, can you talk a little bit about what went into, I believe, the original city staff recommendation, and maybe also a little bit about what budget that we have available for the next fiscal year and anticipated, and how this works into it, and what we've already spent or committed?
Sure. So my original recommendation was based on a sharing of the costs for the unexpected site conditions, and that's basically it. You know, looking at approximate number, saying let's share 50-50. You also taking a look at the funds available in the City Center Fund, which are it's a less rich TIF district than the Tiger Triangle is. But we do have sufficient funds to support the $400,000 development assistance grant. It's been requested in next year's TCDA budget, and there are sufficient funds to pay for it should the board approve that grant amount. Your other question was about how much we have available total next year, or?
Yes. Do we have, I guess, how much is in the budget? How much have we already earmarked for projects going on?
So in the City Center, we do not have any other development assistance grants outstanding. We do have a separate program, which is the Building Improvement Grant Program. That's a separate line item. There's no other development assistance grants currently in the City Center. And the way these grants typically pay for SDCs at the end of the project. So that way we have a finished project, there are systems development charges that are due, and then the TIF agency pays that cost. So those funds are made whole, but that's taken off the developer's books, and that assists them in making a project feasible. So since there is a lag time, let's say that there is a project that comes in next year or end of this year, this calendar year, we're looking at like an 18-month construction process. So we will be able to plan for that development assistance if it was granted and requested in the next fiscal year's budget.
Thank you.
Sure.
Are there any questions? Yes. Director Hu.
Chair Murphy mentioned that there was no government assistance, but that's not quite true, right? Because the email you sent to us, granted, it's not just exclusively to AVA. Any developer come in would have received this assistance, and it's in the email that you sent to us. It's not public on the packet. So I remember the EPA did pay for $400,000 for cleanup, and the city invests a lot in time for tenant assistance, period tenant assistance for removal, and so that's in the tune of, I don't have the email in front of me, at least 800,000. Was that not correct?
So all told, I should have pulled these numbers before.
Yeah.
With the grant, there was a $400,000 EPA cleanup grant, especially for this. Then we did pay for cleanup costs on top of that, and the cost to relocate tenants. So I think your memory is right, about 800,000. However, that's a baseline to get any developer interested in this property. It's a very challenging property, even outside of the contamination. Just its location, size, being in the floodway, makes it very difficult to build on. And most developers, when they would have heard about the history and the contamination on site, would have run away. But we, as an agency, consciously bought this property knowing it was contaminated with the strategy of getting this grant, cleaning it up, preparing it for development. Because in addition to being a very hard site to build, it's a completely key site for Main Street, for downtown. It's the 100% corner, you could say, corner of Fano Creek and Main Street. So we want a really good project there that's going to help connect people to the creek and continue the active frontage, and having people living above as well is going to be a benefit. More people that live downtown is going to attract more investment of restaurants and drinking establishments, the kind of businesses that we want to see more of. So, there were costs, but those costs were not, I wouldn't call those direct subsidies of AVA, but baseline costs to get anyone interested in that property.
Right, I understand. But I just want to people to know that the city did invest a substantially amount of time and money into it because it's an important piece of location property for us for economic development. And I personally am very excited that Avas is coming. So yeah, but I'm just struggling with the rationale for this amount versus the staff original recommendation. So thank you.
Director Wolf.
Thank you, Mayor Lube. And I, too, like Director Hu, am very excited to see Ava's in this complex built downtown. I think, Mayor Lube, I don't know when the right time to jump to this conversation or this kind of deliberation, but my concern around the $400,000 is that it's the budgeted amount. I appreciate Manager Farrelly talking about, well, we can, it'll take 18 months so we can kind of head to that next fiscal year. That just as we start to plan a year out that we might need funds and take that like a potential future obligation gives me pause. I am so grateful for the vision and the leadership to take this space and make it something that I think our community will absolutely love. So I will just put out there, I think the number, I think I'm a little uncomfortable with 400. I think it's more than 200. I don't know if that's 350. I don't know what's appropriate, but I feel like this is the conversation that we need to have. So I would like to start that, but absolutely support something, but maybe not completely 400. I'm just uncomfortable with that. And, I'm not sure what is that range that is enough that makes sense to have it as a future opportunity, but certainly want to support this project in a meaningful way. Thank you.
Would you like to respond?
Yeah. I just wanted to, as a developer, as somebody who walk in, understanding that what brownfield is and what it takes, and it's not just this site, the neighboring properties, and I'm an environmentalist, securing Fano Creek from potential hazards that is moving underground from from neighboring property to our property to Fano Creek. The cost of making this project safe and doable for us so far, we are dealing with inflation, dealing with shortage of supplies, and shortage of people who do the work with the funding we had that we got approval last year, 7% inflation that is happening. We are dealing with all of those in addition to making Fano Creek safe. Beside what city did with $400,000, they took care of this site, but there are problems in the vicinity of the site that we are taking care of it. As an environmental engineer, I cannot close my eyes and spend. This project is about $9.2 million project for us. The money we put in, the money we borrowed that we need to pay back, the extra money that we face with the boulders, and then the extra effort that we are doing with securing potential environmental hazards that comes from the adjacent property. Those are all extra time and effort and money that we are putting in, and what we are asking from the city to help us to get through this phase is not an easy phase for us to pass through. So we need the help, and the amount we are asking in, so far is $780,000, more than what we predicted and projected, and we have. So $400,000 is paying for half of what it is. So if you need more information of where we are and what we are doing, I think Sean is being involved. I think it's not unreasonable. This is something we're asking is not unreasonable compared to we're just making it kind of share the burden with us. It was a kind of a partnership with the city from the beginning. It is our legacy to develop brownfields. We're not just selling coffee, everybody can sell coffee, but we are going to the communities, we're enhancing communities, we're enriching communities, we're creating local jobs. We take care of everything that possibly we could take care of with this site. It's a great site, it's a great location. I'm so proud to be part of this community. I was at the grand opening at the park, and I enjoyed being a part of the Beaverton community for years. We just won another award from this Friday for the best small business in Beaverton. We want to bring that to Tiger, and we want to bring it with strength and what we did for, and it's larger scale, it's a bigger project, so we need your help. That's bottom line.
Director Shaw?
Thank you, Director Lube. To appreciate the vision of having these businesses downtown in a very vital part of the downtown. And if I recall, as a developer, and appreciate also your background as an environmental engineer, I had attended the Town Center Advisory Commission where this was discussed. And if I recall correctly, you'd mentioned that part of the due diligence you have in your everyday job in these exact projects is to do geotechnical due diligence as well as environmental due diligence. But did I hear you correctly that night that said you chose not to do that on this property?
The geotechnical study was done by the city, and it was done by a credible company. But nobody found this kind of boulders right beneath the buildings that originally was there.
It's not typical then that you would do your own geotechnical, even in your day-to-day business of environmental engineer?
We trusted the company who did the original geotechnical, and we trusted the city. So we didn't do it, no. We look at the data, the reports. Actually, the data or the reports, we send it back with our design, the mixed-use development design. We send it back to the same company and ask them to review the data again and give us recommendation. And they did that. But nobody was aware of the boulders.
Yeah, thank you. And I know that the slides of the boulders were all over the property, not just under the building. So that raises a concern, I would say, about the company perhaps that did the geotechnical. But and then perhaps a question to Town Center Advisory Commission Chair Tom Murphy. I know, as I mentioned, I attended that meeting, and it was a little bit of a back of an envelope. Staff had recommended $200,000, and one of the commissioners had literally on a piece of paper then recommended $400,000. So I was concerned, and maybe some due diligence was done after the fact, but I am still concerned that it was a number that may not have been vetted properly, and that I'm still concerned also about the dollars that are in that fund. And I'm leaning towards going with staff's original recommendation, though could also be, if throughout this discussion, some consideration if there should be additional dollars. Thank you.
We are more than happy to provide the information from the general contractor for our site construction manager. Everything is documented, is what we send to the bank, what we can provide to you guys. We have no problem with providing financial information of what the cost was.
Director Hu?
So this is my thinking process. First, I welcome, and I'm really happy you're here, and I want to support you. But my thinking process is you were starting this project without any plan to seek city assistance, right? So, and then all of a sudden this boulder issue came, and I understand Director Shaw's concern, and I share that. So I think staff original recommendation is fair because this is a little bit more than half of the expenses that deal with the unexpected boulder. So I think, I understand inflation and everything that happens to everybody is not unique to you. And this boulder part is unique to you. And just because I really also support just like the rest of the city, I'm very comfortable with, the $200,000 figure because it's more than half of the expected cost for the boulder. Everything else, I understand there are, like delay, inflation, but that's common to everybody. So for me, I'm I'm probably not going to go over 200. So that's my number.
So the boulders were one thing. The concrete foundation has changed because of the boulders and the site condition. The delay in the process of at least 6 weeks, our general contractor sent us a bill for $110,000 because of the number of people he had to have at the site. So the subcontractor had his own cost, the general contractor has his own people and on-site observation, and then the delay of another being there for another 6 weeks is so far, that those are the costs that occurred. So as I said, I'd be more than happy to provide those. On our side, I understand the inflation is something that happens. 7%, it was another $400,000 on us. But as I said, it wasn't just the boulder removing and replacing, it was all the other things that entailed after that.
I understand where everyone's coming from and all of the concerns, and I don't disagree with them, and I'm struggling with it as well. And I'm trying to understand and figure out if I'm struggling with it because it's coming to us in a different part of the process than anybody else has come to us with. And so trying to think about it, if this $9 million project were to come to us and say they can't pencil it out and they need $400,000 in order to make this project work, how would I treat it then? Or for the 780 or whatever. And I don't 1,000% have an answer to it, but I just, I want us to also sort of play devil's advocate and think about it on an even playing field with the people who have come to us at a different point in the process, because maybe this is throwing us off a little bit, and it's possible it doesn't change in the end, but is that what's throwing us off? Or would you feel the same way if they would have come earlier in the process? I just want to ask that question in general. Director Shaw, you still have your hand up. I wasn't sure if you wanted to continue.
My apologies. I did not take my digital hand down. I apologize, Director Lube.
Yeah. Director Singh, do you have any questions or comments?
I'll just say that, I'm reading through the memo, and I just really appreciate the work that's been put in and the vision and everything, and I just want to emphasize that I'm fully supportive of this project, and I think it should be a priority. So whatever we can do to support, I think I'm willing to do that. So.
Can you give me a dollar figure?
I agree with.
I'm going to ask everybody, so I'm starting with you.
I agree with Councilor Wolf's range. I think that's appropriate. So.
Okay, somewhere over 200, but less than 400.
Yeah.
Okay, we're getting there. Youth Councilor Nog.
I don't have a question about the financials of this. I was just curious how long this Ava Roasteria was planning on staying open, because I love going to the cafes to study, and I really appreciate it for being one of the cafes that stays open so late. So I was just curious because I'm planning on coming home for college and studying, so.
Depends on how much you pay us. Depends.
So
on
do I
that.
not
No,
vote for this?
We are planning to, we're a coffee shop, we start early in the morning. And the store we have in downtown Beaverton used to be 24/7, but now because of the safety reason, we close it at midnight. So I'm hoping that, I actually walked with my husband a couple of nights ago. We came around 10:30 and look at the area to see if we see any people walk, any cars standing. There was nothing, it was dead. So we look at each other and say, we're going to change this. This is going to change Tigard. That's the way we did change Beaverton. When we started Beaverton 17 years ago, and I want to iterate in that. We are a small business owners, small developers. This is the biggest project we have ever done. So we took a lot of risk to get here. and unfortunate that we had to take more risk and deal with it. But we changed the face of Beaverton, the location we went to. I recommend that you stop by and take a look at midnight what's happening in Beaverton, where we are. Used to be nothing. So this is what we are planning, or we are hoping that this business thrive, Tigard, as well as thrive our business, to be able to do more of this brownfields development across our state. Only 13,000 brownfields in the state of Oregon. I hope a handful of those can be in the future of our area. So to answer your question, from early morning to late at night, depends on how much the community support us.
Okay, thank you. Coming from like the youth perspective, I know that there are a lot of teenagers that would love to have a cafe that stays open that late. I know that if I had a cafe that stayed open as late as that, I would definitely choose a Tigard location, and I know a lot of my friends would rather choose a Tigard location because the library closes at 8, which seems like a decent time, but we also procrastinate a lot. So considering like a lot of factors, businesses that are open to stay open longer and later are valuable for youth, and I think that's just my perspective to it.
That was the main reason we kept our doors open till midnight. As a mother, at the time we opened Beaverton location, I had a 16-year-old son that they didn't have anywhere to go. So for this, it's a public area. Even today, you know, our major customers we have at night are students. So, and that's something that I'm really proud of, that we provide a place for our youth, for the young adults in our community, that there's no other place to go.
Okay, I'm going to do a temperature check. So we've heard from Director Singh. Director Shaw, do you have a dollar figure that you're comfortable with?
Yeah, I'm comfortable with 200K, just as Director Hu.
Okay. Director Wolf?
I'm at 300, and it leaves 25% still, available for future. But I'm excited about this project. I think it's a catalyst for a shift downtown, and that's where I am. Thank you, Mayor Lou.
Director Hu, I just wanted to check in with you again and see if there were any changes with this conversation.
No, I'm comfortable with 200.
Okay. Do you want to give a dollar figure? I know you don't typically weigh in on figures, but.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if I can actually even vote on a TCDA measure, but I appreciate Councilor Wolf's figure of 300, just because I know that if there were places open later in Tigard, more people would be, like, more youth would be willing to stay locally. So that's like one of the things that I've seen in like having to drive to Lake Oswego or Beaverton. So I think it would be a good investment.
Thank you. Redevelopment Project Manager Fairley, I want to ask a practical question of, we're talking $200,000, $300,000, $400,000, and if we were to go perhaps with Director Wolf's, would $100,000, I'm talking in practical terms about what sort of impact would that actually be for somebody trying to redevelop downtown? Would that be impactful? I mean, I know in this situation that's 25% of what we're talking about, but I think of a new project.
Right. Well, I can't, anticipate every different kind of development. If there was a very small development on a small parcel, 100,000 could be meaningful. But we're typically seeing, larger projects. Those smaller projects are sometimes, unless they're just like a one-story building, if you're doing like a 2 or 3 story building on a smaller parcel, those are per square foot can be very expensive to build. So if it was a very small project, $100,000 could be significant. If it was a larger, Atwell style project, not $100,000 would not be very meaningful.
Okay. Thank you for that gut check. I've asked all of you. I haven't provided mine. So I am also in agreement with at least Director Wolf, and also, kind of with Director Singh. I was initially, I think, just generally skeptical, and I was trying to gut check myself on where in the process, but I think it really has the potential to be such a catalyst for Main Street, because if you drive by at night, there's not a whole lot going on, and so it has the potential to really kick that off. And so I think with the unforeseen circumstances, I am open to 300,000 plus. And so with that, I would entertain anybody to make a motion or, with an edit to the resolution to get us started and moving forward.
I move to approve TCDA Resolution 23-03.
City Recorder Krager, is it 03 or 02? I have both in my notes. 03, okay. And so for clarification, that is the original amount with the $400,000. Director Wolf?
So I was looking for that. Councilor Singh, you said you moved to approve. Did you modify? I apologize. Would you restate your motion?
Yeah, I just said what's on the script. So I moved to approve TCDA resolution number 23-03.
Which is the TCAC amount of $400,000.
400, yeah. So I apologize. I usually, being remote, my screens aren't as readily available as they usually are. I will stand. I am opting to not second the 400. I would choose to amend it, but.
Okay. We're looking for a second, and then considering. So
just amend it, or?
No, the motion will die,
Okay.
and then we can do a new motion.
Okay.
So seeing no second, the motion will not move forward. Is there another motion that somebody would like to make? Yes, Director Shaw.
Yes, I'd like to make a motion to approve TCDA resolution number 23-03 at the amount of $200,000.
Okay, it's been moved. Is there a second?
I second.
Okay, is there any discussion? Okay. Seeing none, City Recorder Krager, will you read the number and title of the resolution?
TCDA Resolution Number 23-03, a resolution authorizing the Executive Director of the Town Center Development Agency to sign a development assistant agreement with Ava Tiger Development, LLC, for the Ava Main Street project at the amount of $200,000.
Thank you. Will you conduct a roll call vote, starting with Youth Councilor Nog for an advisory vote?
Youth Councilor Nog.
I'm actually curious, can I vote on this? Because I don't think
It's a,
Have I been able to vote on land use or land?
The city attorney said that you could give an advisory vote on this.
This isn't a land use case, so you can give an advisory vote.
I would go with no. I would err for a little bit more for 250 plus.
Okay, thank you.
Director Hu?
Yes.
Chair Lube?
No.
Director Shaw?
Yes.
Director Singh?
No.
Director Wolf?
No.
That motion fails 2-3 by vote of the council. Is there another motion? Director Wolf, go ahead.
Thank you. I move to approve Resolution 2303 as modified with a value of $300,000.
Okay, there's a motion on the table. Is there a second?
I second the motion.
Thank you. The motion has been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion?
Mayor Lube, I'd like to make a comment, and I appreciate Mr. Frawley's comment about whether there's value at $100,000. I still feel there's that opportunity. Then are we covering over 2 periods? But there might be a small shop, and I just, it's that discomfort that I have of really committing the complete budget, but really appreciate the honesty and appreciated, Mayor, your question of is there value in holding that? But that was my rationale to stay at 300. So thank you for that opportunity. So.
Thank you. Any additional discussion? Seeing none, City Recorder Kratiger, can you please read the number and title of the resolution?
TCDA Resolution Number 23-03, a resolution authorizing the Executive Director of the Town Center Development Agency to sign a development assistance agreement with Ava Tiger Development, LLC for the Ava Main Street project at the amount of $300,000.
Thank you. City Recorder Kratiger, can you conduct a roll call vote, starting with Youth Councilor Nog for an advisory vote?
Youth Councilor Nog?
Yes.
Director Hu?
No.
Chair Lube?
Yes.
Director Shaw?
No.
Director Singh?
Yes.
Director Wolf?
Yes.
Okay. That TCDA Resolution 23-03 amended to $300,000 has been approved. 3-2 vote of the agency. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
We will reconvene the Tigard City Council for the remainder of the meeting. I do want to ask, I know that we are running a little bit behind schedule. Is there interest in pushing forward, or would anybody like a few-minute break? A 5-minute break, anyone? Okay, wanted to ask the question. The next item on our agenda is a housing policy update and roadmap, and we have Senior Planner Warren to give us the staff update. Welcome.
Good evening, Mayor Lube and council members. May we get the presentation on the screen, perhaps? I'll go ahead and start because I know we're behind time a bit here, and just wait for that to pop up here in a second. For the record, I'm Skylar Warren, Senior Planner in the Department of Community Development. I'm with you here tonight to provide an informational briefing on all things housing and housing policy. So this is a huge topic. The housing equation is a complex one. It has multivariate inputs, an array of factors. There's no single solution. So we're not going to be able to get to the full picture of housing in 20 minutes, but I do want to talk about some key indicators and provide the council with an overview of how the city of Tigard has worked over the past decade to move the market through regulatory reform and incentives, and give you a quick look ahead to some policy decisions that will be coming to you in the near future. Next slide, please. So I'll start with an older graphic here, but one that I continue to use because I think it really does a great job presenting the root of our ongoing regional housing crisis. So it shows the ratio of housing permits across the metro area against the population change. As you can see, this number has fluctuated over the years, but two general trends should be noted. The first is that the region overbuilt housing by about 10,000 units in the run-up to the Great Recession in 2008. The market crash brought home construction to a virtual standstill. However, during this period, the metro region experienced continued growth from in-migration, And from that point until 2016, the region failed to produce 24,000 housing units that were needed to keep up with population growth. Next slide. So the obvious question is, well, how have we done since 2016? The answer, unfortunately, is not much better. So Echo Northwest produced a report for the Oregon legislature in 2022, and that report estimated that the metro region is now more than 33,000 units behind in underproduction. However, the story is much worse than that. Previous estimates of housing need had always been based on the need against population growth, without accounting for currently unhoused individuals and families. When we count the units needed to house this population, the figure rises to more than 43,000 housing units. That's a huge number, and it's having a marked and visible effect on the economic prospects and the livability of our region. Next slide. So on this slide, and I should say that all but the last one were produced by the Oregon Office of Economic Analysis. This one shows single-family housing starts for the past 30 years. As you can see, the region has failed to fully recover from the Great Recession in this sector. Next slide. However, multifamily starts have recovered their pace. This is a sign of some hope, as multifamily units will be the most expedient way to catch up from underproduction. Next slide. And this is also the sector where there is currently the most need. As you can see by multiple metrics, renting households are doing worse than homeowners. A significant driver of this trend is that for at least the last decade, increases in rents in the state are outpacing inflation and wage growth. Nationally, from 1985 to 2020, rent prices have increased 149%, while income increased just 35%. Multiple recent reports have listed Oregon in the top 10 for median rent, and paired with lower median incomes across the state, this means that we have a higher rate of rent burden. Next slide. But it's not just renters who are feeling priced out. Increasingly, there are fewer households who can afford homeownership units without being price burdened. At least part of this is due to the increase in mortgage rates. However, home prices have consistently outpaced wage growth since the Great Recession. So now that I've covered some of the trends we're seeing in housing, I want to shift to a timeline of the city's investments in meeting its own housing goals and contributing to regional solutions. Next slide. So the first big move by the Tigard City Council was the adoption of a tax exemption for nonprofit affordable housing in 1996. At the time, Tigard was only the second city in the entire metro region to adopt this program. It was championed by Sheila Greenlaw Fink, who was at that time the executive director of Community Partners for Affordable Housing, just recently retired from the Community Housing Fund. And although those tax exemptions don't help build new housing, they make the operation of those units more sustainable. Next slide. In the following years, there were a number of small pilot programs. None were as successful as the tax exemption program. And in 2016, Hannah Holloway, who was at the time an intern in community development, prepared a report that summarized the history of these programs and proposed greater investment in affordable housing. Next slide. The following year, the Tigard Triangle Lien Code was adopted. This community development planning effort resulted in an innovative regulatory approach that unlocked the development potential in one of Tigard's critical 2040 centers. Although not explicitly aimed at speeding development of affordable housing, the Lien Code has been incredibly successful in jumpstarting both market rate and affordable housing production. Next slide. In 2018, the council adopted a policy of exempting regulated affordable housing units from city system development charges. This was the city's first major investment in affordable housing development and can represent millions of dollars in incentives per project. Next slide. Later that year, the Housing Options Code Reform Package was adopted. These reforms in the Development Code legalized middle housing, including duplexes, triplexes, quads, cottage clusters, and courtyard units throughout the city. The project also streamlined the code so that all standards for housing were made clear and objective. This action preceded and perhaps inspired state action to legalize middle housing statewide the following year and became a milestone in Tigard's growing reputation as a housing innovator. Next slide. The same legislative session that produced House Bill 2001 also resulted in House Bill 4006. So this bill designated cities across the state as rent burdened if more than 25% of their renters were themselves rent burdened. We've been designated as a rent burdened community every year since, and this designation comes with a requirement that we hold an annual meeting on the causes and consequences of rent burden. Next slide. However, the bill did come with some funding to complete housing policy work, including housing needs analysis and code reforms, with rent-burdened cities being prioritized for funding. Since we did not have any outdated statutorily required policy documents at that time, we instead approached DLCD, the Department of Land Conservation and Development, with a proposal that we use a grant to produce the city's first affordable housing plan. At the time, this was a little outside their comfort zone, but we persisted and they ultimately agreed. That plan was adopted later that year, and more importantly, we did not let the plan sit on a shelf. We immediately went to work to implement its recommendations. So as I go through the next several slides, actions that were recommendations of that affordable housing plan are noted as such at the top right below the year. Next slide. So within a few months of the plan adoption, we brought forward and council adopted an exemption from system development charges for accessory dwelling units. To be eligible, the ADU must be 1,000 square feet or less and cannot be used as a short-term rental for a period of 10 years after its construction. This exemption has a sunset date of July 31st of this year, and I'm going to return to this later in the presentation. Next slide. Later that year, we developed the construction excise tax program to fund affordable housing that was subsequently adopted by council. This tax is a 1% levy on the permit value of construction permits and is used according to a formula required by state law. The proceeds help to backfill the system development charge exemption I mentioned earlier and provide the city with a small budget for flexible affordable housing programs. A very small portion is remitted to the state to support home ownership programs in the city, and we hope to advocate long-term to return those funds to local control through legislative action. Next slide. In 2020, after some significant analysis, we brought a recommendation to the council to accept joint entitlement status in the Community Development Block Grant Program. That's a federal grant program. There's a lot of background on this one, and I will be back with you next month to cover it in a lot of detail, so I won't spend a lot of time on this one, but I'll summarize by saying this election status gives the city a small amount of funding to supplement its affordable housing program budget that is primarily funded by the construction excise tax. Next slide. In 2020, we brought a development assistance program online for the city's 2 tax increment financing districts. This program incentivizes affordable housing development through a line item allocation for affordable housing development assistance. Next slide. In 2021, as a corollary project of the River Terrace 2.0 concept planning project, we prepared an updated housing needs analysis and the associated comprehensive plan policy updates. These were adopted by council in May of that year, and the document will provide guidance for housing policy over the next few years. The state has scheduled our next update for 2026. We are now on a regular schedule as a product of, I believe it's House Bill 2003 that was passed in the 2019 session. Next slide. Although it was delayed slightly by the pandemic, in late 2021, we rolled out our affordable homeownership program with Proud Ground, the state's largest community land trust. This program provides down payment assistance to families making 80% or less of the area median income who are otherwise qualified for a mortgage. In exchange for the assistance, the land beneath the home is placed in the land trust, which protects it for affordable housing in perpetuity. When the home is resold, it must be sold to an income-qualified buyer, ensuring that the city's investment continues to bear fruit for generations. This program is an important leg up for families and communities who have historically been frozen out of homeownership and the intergenerational wealth accrual that it entails. To date, the program has supported 4 families in finding permanent homes in the city, and there are more buyers currently in the market. This program will also help the city preserve 2 single detached units being sold sometime in the coming months by the Housing Authority of Washington County. Next slide. In 2021, the Town Center Development Authority approved a ground lease to Northwest Housing Alternatives for the construction of 58 units of affordable senior housing. This project is due to complete construction and begin leasing up later this year. Next slide. And in 2022, the council approved an allocation of $1.5 million from its American Rescue Plan Act funds to create a middle housing revolving loan fund. This program, which is the first of its kind in the state and perhaps the nation, will not launch next month. The fund will provide pre-development and construction lending for the development of middle housing with a guarantee that a minimum number of units will be made available to low-income buyers supported by down payment assistance programs like the one that we support with Proud Ground. Next slide. So next, I'm going to give a quick roadmap of some coming policy decisions. As I mentioned earlier, that system development charge exemption for accessory dwelling units that was adopted in 2019 is set to expire at the end of July. In June, I will be bringing to the council a small set of municipal code amendments. Those amendments include an extension of this exemption, as well as an exemption from construction excise tax for accessory dwelling units. There are also some clarifications to the wording on the system development charge exemption for regulated affordable units to make more explicit how affordable home ownership units qualify and to more clearly allow for a manager's unit as allowed under HUD rules, Department of Housing and Urban Development. So to clarify there, those rules allow for a market rate unit for a manager. Our code was not explicitly allowing for that, and we had to make an interpretation, so we want to make that explicit. Next slide. The Metro Council is scheduled on July 20th to approve $700,000 in grant funding for the city to proceed with the community plan for River Terrace 2.0. So I'll be coming to the council shortly thereafter to approve acceptance of this award and grant authority to the city manager to sign an intergovernmental agreement. Next slide. And we are continuing our work to develop a rental registration and inspection program. We have met with employees at the City of Gresham to discuss more about the history and implementation of their program, and we've learned quite a lot. We've also attended multiple professional development activities around this to learn what other cities are doing. And we'll be meeting with stakeholders, including property managers and owners again, to discuss the options for rolling out this program. We'll update the council later this summer on that discussion with a plan to return to you in the late fall with a draft program for adoption. Next slide. And so that concludes my presentation tonight. I know there's a ton of information in there. We covered about 2 decades of work altogether, but I'm happy to answer any questions you may have or delve deeper into any of those programs, any more information that you'd need.
Thank you, Mr. Warren. We will open it up for questions. Councilor Singh?
Yeah, I just had one question about the ADUs. Do you know how many we've built in Tiger?
Total, I don't know exactly how many we had built. The number was pretty low prior to the adoption of that exemption. I should also say that that Housing Options project legalized ADUs citywide that were detached. They weren't allowed to be detached before. And so since those changes, we've seen 33 accessory dwelling units developed. I think I would be shocked to find that the total number prior to that exceeded 33. So I think it's safe to say that we've doubled the number in the intervening years.
Thank you for that information. That was actually going to be one of my questions. I remember actually having this conversation, and it's, over the last 4 years, this is one of the conversations on the ADU exemption that stuck in my head, because I wouldn't call it contentious, but it was a vibrant discussion. And so I was eager to see, based on the concerns that we had, several years ago, but 30 is a great number of units to be going forward. Thank you for having that available. Council President Hu?
I think I'm on the same track. Yeah, so my question was, since that system development charge incentive for ADU is coming back before the council again, my line of question is, how do we know what's working, what's not working, or is it working at all? I mean, 30 versus 30 after before. I mean, I'm simplifying it. So, I think my ultimate question is, can we do more to encourage ADU other than system development charges incentive? I mean, it's just a big, broad question. I just want to know if it's working or is it not. What can be done more?
I think, short of further incentives that actually subsidize the cost of accessory dwelling units, it would be hard for us to lower the barriers to their construction any more than we have. We've exempted them from construction excise tax. We've exempted them from system development charges. We've made them subject to minimal standards. And I think the feedback that we've gotten from the folks that have developed them is that they're appreciative of the lowering of those barriers. Even within the last month, we've really heard from some folks who had a really positive experience building an accessory dwelling unit here in the city for an elderly relative who they wanted to bring closer to home, not have them live in assisted living. And by far, the vast majority of the accessory dwelling units that we're seeing built are being built by a property owner who's adding it either to bring in additional rent, to provide housing for a family member, or other things like that. And so I think there do remain barriers out there. I think financing is one that's been addressed somewhat. There are some nonprofits working in the region. Craft 3 is one of them. We've worked with them on some other revolving loan funds, but they do provide lending now for the construction of accessory dwelling units, where before it was very challenging for a property owner to do that. You either had to have the cash on hand, or you had to have the appropriate amount of equity in your home to be able to borrow against. Craft 3 is able to actually now lend against the future value with the construction of the accessory dwelling unit, so you don't have to have as much equity. And I think one of the other barriers is just we're not the only agency that assesses fees on the construction of a dwelling unit. And so Washington County, of course, assesses the transportation development tax, which is fairly significant for an accessory dwelling unit. It's about $4,000 to $5,000 on a unit that is typically going to cost around $100,000. So, and there are others like that, but I do think we've lowered barriers pretty significantly.
Yeah, and I also heard one homeowner wanting to build a mother-in-law suite, and they want to charge him $12,000 for another water meter or bigger water meter. I don't know if we have so many water districts, so I don't know if that's the city and the city control, but that's another barrier. I think if you need to pay $12,000 to make your water meter bigger, that's a big barrier. So, yeah. So, I appreciate your work on this, and I think we have more work to do. So, Thank you.
Youth Councilor Nog?
I'm just curious. So I think you briefly mentioned about the City of Gresham Rental Housing Inspection Program. Which aspects of that program do you plan on adopting for the City of Tigard? Like, are there any key points?
So we have the benefit of having a fairly large city that had a program in place for about a decade now. So they've really tweaked and developed that program over those 10 years and kind of right-sized the program and I think really set the expectations really well for others in the state who want to follow their lead. So I think we would largely follow the model that they have. Where we might want to differ from them is just in the rate at which we're doing those inspections. As a larger city, they have a little bit larger staff, they have more budget, and they have more rental units. So we would probably want to scale that back. And we'll want to work with our property managers and property owners to right-size the registration fees to support that program.
Thank you. I don't see any hands up from Councillor Wolf or Councillor Shaw. Okay. I don't have any questions other than I'm looking forward to more of these details coming back. So hopefully we can continue, or we can provide some relief for the renters in our city. Because I mean, it's scary when you look at those different graphs over time, just on how individuals and families are being pinched and priced out of our city. So thank you for the presentation, and I look forward to you coming back.
Thank you, Mayor.
Next on our agenda is the police service levy ballot measure date selection, and we have City Manager Reimer here. Along with Assistant City Manager Nyland, who is walking up. I wanted to give you an entrance, you know.
Perfect. Well, good evening again, Mayor, councilors, members of the community, and our teammates. This is the third of what we envisioned 3 discussions that you would have on the police services levy. As you recall, the first conversation was led by our police teammates, the chief, commander, and just really talking about the current levy that we have. What is that funding? What are some of the results we're seeing? Second conversation happened just a week ago, when we were talking about the form of the potential ballot measure, in which the council concurred that looking at a continuation or renewal of what we have in place today. And then today is to really talk about the when. And so Assistant City Manager Nyland is prepared to share some information from recent ballot measures and then make our recommendation to you. And we also, not included in the packet, I believe, but also would like the council to consider the subcommittee that we talked about and having 2 of you join us as a professional team to help guide the conversations and the strategy moving forward. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Assistant City Manager Kathy Nyland.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is still Kathy Nyland, and I'm the Assistant City Manager for Engagement and Innovation. My voice is cracking, so that's why I have the water. Tonight, I'm here to talk about the police service levy. While this is a briefing, we do have 2 asks. 1, for you to consider when to go to ballot, and 2, for you to choose 2 members to serve on the internal levy subcommittee. That's going to be fun, so I look forward to the discussion. So there are many factors to consider when shaping a potential levy. There's the need, the cost, the deliverables, what the levy would purchase or pay for. Then there are also the more nuanced pieces that will help determine the optimal path to success. Those include previous patterns, trends, and understanding the political landscape. What other measures might be included on the ballot? These could confuse or complement our efforts, so we want to be really intentional, taking into account the many variables when deliberating or ultimately deciding. As you may recall, as City Manager stated, on April 29th, Chief McAlpine and Commander McDonald provided a briefing about the history behind our current levy, the work we did to land on the services covered, and the cost associated with that levy ask. That discussion was the what and the why. Last week, on May 16th, there was a discussion about the how, specifically how we were going to move forward. The needs that the levy provides have not gone away. The additional officers, the SRO, and the de-escalation training. The discussion was about how we continue, whether that was a renewal, a replacement, or a new levy. You opted to move forward with a renewal. So tonight's conversation will be focused on the when we should place a renewal levy on the ballot. I'll provide some historical data, some recent results, and some insight into other potential campaigns. The current police service levy was passed in May 2020. It is set to expire in 2025. Our recommendation is to go before voters in 2024. So 2024 is a big campaign year, due in part because of the presidential election. We looked at some historical data regarding voter turnout in Washington County during presidential election years, and here's what we found. In 2012, during the primary, the overall voter turnout was 30%. In November, the general election, the overall turnout was 81%. In 2016, the primary election, the overall turnout was 48%. In November, the general election, the overall turnout was 80%. And in 2020, the primary election overall turnout was 47%. And in November, the overall turnout was 83%. So last week, May 16th, we also had an election. We are tracking the results in hopes to help better inform us about when to place this renewal levy. Something to note, the voter turnout for Washington County for the recent election was 22%. This is about half of what we see during the primary during a presidential year. Last week's election was primarily focused on candidate races for school board, fire district, and water district positions, to name just a few. However, there were several local measures on the ballot with mixed results. North Plains, they had a 5-year public safety local option levy which failed with 59% opposing. The City of Portland's renewal for a children's investment passed with 67%. This was their 4th renewal. Lake Oswego, renewal levy for education passed with 81%. And Sherwood's 5-year levy to maintain teachers and class size passed 59%. Other things to note, the City of Gresham, 5-year public safety levy failed 51%. This was their 3rd attempt in 15 years to try this funding. Multnomah County's capital gains failed at 80% opposing. We are still reviewing the state results, again seeing mixed results, but it appears renewals are more successful than not, but never guaranteed. As mentioned earlier, we do anticipate that 2024 will be a busy campaign year. In addition to the presidential election, we have local candidate races, we have county commissioner races, including Washington County, and we have city council elections. We will also see a number of local measures being placed. Right now, we know that the Tualatin Valley Fire and Rescue will be placing an increased levy on the May 2024 ballot. The City of Tigard will likely be placing a charter amendment on the May 2024 ballot. And we are hearing rumblings about other possible measures, but nothing has been confirmed yet. We will continue to monitor and track. So I realized I just threw out a lot of information and numbers at you. So to summarize, presidential election years have higher voter turnout than in non-presidential years. General elections have higher voter turnout than primaries, but a primary in a presidential year has dramatically higher turnout than a normal year. While renewals are quote-unquote easier to pass, there is no guarantee, and based on last week's results, more measures have steep roads before them. So all of that said, our recommendation is to place the police service renewal levy on the May 2024 ballot. We feel this is the most optimal path for success. We already know a couple other measures that will be on the ballot so we can strategize and align our communications and messaging. We'll aim to complement efforts rather than compete and confuse. The timing of a May election will also allow us space in case there is a need for multiple attempts for a successful passage. We know that campaigns will take work, even renewals. Voter turnout and get out the vote efforts will be critical for success in 2024. Based on our experience, knowledge, and past practices, the keys to success are: know our audience, develop clear messaging, tell people what they are getting and be positive, not what they may lose and be negative. Build a strong team, which you are all part of. Reach voters. Events, media, social media, in-person interactions, all of those will come into play. We know we need this levy. We also know what is needed for successful passage. That is why we are recommending the police service renewal levy be placed on May 2024 ballot. A quick follow-up to last week's conversation. We are meeting this week to discuss the community survey to gauge levels of support and thoughts about cost sensitivity. I know you mentioned all of that last week. So thank you for your time. We are here for questions, for follow-ups, as you discuss and deliberate the timing for the renewal levy and choosing 2 members to serve on the internal subcommittee. Chief, do you have anything to add? Any follow-ups? Softball.
This is why she's leading the polling and getting that information. No, you guys have all been generous and very supportive. I cannot understate how important, us getting out there, the renewal, what it means to the community, what it means to the department, and just being able to provide the level of service that our community deserves in trying to keep us safe. So, I'm here to answer any questions. The only thing I did want to do, since I was a little bit remote last time, was Councilor Singh, your concern or comment you just wanted to bring up about the defunding. And so, I took a look at different websites, ABC, Bloomberg, what they were following, and they studied about 109 much larger cities. We're talking, Portland, Philadelphia, New York, things of that nature. And of those, when they talked about defunding, only 8 actually defunded, less than 2% of the budget, and then 91 actually increased by over 2%, and some were at 5 or 4%. And most of it was cited due to crime concerns is why they were increasing. And the largest one that was right after the kind of the defunding movement was Austin, City of Austin. They took a dramatic 2021 and cut the police budget by 50%, 30%, only to add 50% the following year because of crime concerns. So I think it was a valid question to ask, and I wanted to provide you with that information.
The floor is yours. Questions and comments, discussions
and
deliberation.
Yeah. I think the first conversation we should go with is when to go to the ballot. So let's work on answering that question first. Council President Hu, you were reaching for your mic, so I assume you have something to say.
So in May 2020, we also passed the Washington County Library renewal and Washington County Public Safety renewal. Are they going to come back next year at the same time?
We're still monitoring, but some of those that passed in 2020 are going to likely go in 2025.
Okay.
We just added, we're being safe because it's so needed in case we want multiple attempts.
Okay, so thank you.
But if things change, we'll let you know.
And the Columbia City's 4-year levy passed. The Columbia City's 4-year levy passed by 52%. So that's a good news. That's brand new. It's not a renewal, so.
Correct. There is good news in state results.
Yeah.
Some new levies passed.
Yeah.
Some renewals did not. There is good
So,
news.
mixed bags.
Yeah, it's a mixed bag with things that did pass. Some of them were like by 51%. So it just indicates there's always a path forward. It's just going to take work and a well-organized effort.
Yeah, thank you.
Councilor Wolf?
Thank you, Mayor Lube. To your question, Council President Hu, I think Mayor Lube, correct me if I'm wrong, but when we attended the Washington County electeds presentation on their budget, I was thinking they had commented that they had gone out a year early when they went in 2020. So to Assistant City Manager Nyland's point, I think that's also kind of the why, is they kind of had that buffer year, if you will, and they were looking to not add to that buffer. I also support the May, have a little bit of experience with school board elections, and actually 22% I think shows some growth, sadly. So I do appreciate the strategy or idea of a primary presidential period, and to give us that buffer should we go out. So strongly support the May date.
I guess I should phrase the question another way. Are there concerns about the recommended May 2024? Seeing Councillor Shaw say no. Youth Councillor Nog.
Okay, so I have a potential concern about the voter turnout. If not enough people vote for the measure and then all of a sudden the levy passes, what would we do about the concerns? Because according to the data, there is like a lower turnout. Would it be better to be like canvassing more openly during the November election, or just go with the May election?
Noted that the turnout in May is lower than a general election. There's also a tendency to be more divisive at general, so I think no matter if it's May or November, a get out the vote is critical. We're comfortable with May, knowing that there's work.
I foresee you coming back and helping during spring break. I think that's what she was volunteering to do. Did anyone else hear that? Yes, that is an entire room that heard that, Youth Councillor Nog. Thank you for your service. Councillor Singh?
Yeah, I think I have concerns. I mean, one of the questions I have is what percent of the general funds are going to police currently? And then I think the other question was, I feel like a lot is being asked for our community in May 2024 with TV, FNR, the charter. I think it's just a lot as far from a tax perspective. So yeah, that's the only, with inflation and a lot of economic crises happening, I think that's the concern I have, is just being a lot is being asked in 2024 already, and maybe extending or delaying that, maybe just smarter. So.
And again, we are having that conversation about that community survey to gauge cost sensitivity. One of the advantages about May is we have an idea with TVFNR, so can work collaboratively with messaging and whatnot, because there is a common thread in a theme, and we don't want one to succeed at the expense of another. So that's why the messaging and clear communication and just making sure that, again, get out the vote is well orchestrated and aligned with one another.
Council President Hu?
I would like to make a motion.
Oh.
I move to direct staff to work towards a police service levy renewal on the May 2024 ballot.
I'll second.
The motion has been moved and seconded. Councillor Shaw, did you have a question, or were you raising your hand to motion or to second?
Yeah, I was going to raise my hand to second, but Councillor Wolf took care of it, so thank you.
It's difficult when you're remote to know when to just speak and when to raise your hand. So is there any discussion on the motion to direct staff to work towards a police service levy renewal in May of 2024? Okay, Seeing none, will the city recorder conduct a roll call vote, starting with Youth Councilor Nog for an advisory vote?
Youth Councilor Nog,
Yes.
Council President Hu,
Yes.
Mayor Lube,
Yes.
Councilor Shaw,
Yes.
Councilor Singh,
No.
Councilor Wolf.
Yes.
Okay, the motion passes 4-1. And the next item, the next topic to discuss is the subcommittee. And I think we've heard a lot of general discussions and questions. And I know Councilor Wolf is very excited to get going and to get started and is very enthusiastically volunteering herself this evening. I actually think it would be a great opportunity also for Councilor Singh to continue to learn more about the percentages and what goes into it. So that is my question to both of you, asking you to serve on this subcommittee. And is that something that you're open to?
I mean, I just need to know the time commitment, what the time commitment would be, but yeah, I think, yeah, I'm willing to do that depending on, so.
Assistant City Manager Nyland, do you have any general comments or?
We would be very mindful of time. The internal team, the staff will be doing, and we provide coffee.
Unless it's late at night, maybe coffee's not the right choice.
I'll provide tea. Duly noted.
Youth Councilor Nung?
So if you guys need any help at all with strategy or reaching out to youth voters, please let me know, because this is like what I love to do, and I have a lot of strategies. So
again, even though the ask is for 2, like that's the minimum. Like there is like everyone is welcome. Again, we're fun.
Very much appreciated.
Okay. Are there any is there any additional discussion or anything on the subcommittee to move forward? Okay. Councilor Wolf, you have your hand up. I didn't know if you wanted to. Okay. Yes.
Yeah, just briefly, I just wanted to step back, and I apologize if I'm out of order, to acknowledge Councilor Singh's concern about the ask in May, and I think we have other friends that will be joining that ballot in November with asks, so I think that both are going to be expanded requests for support, whether that's a levy or a bond. And so I appreciate Councilor Singh. I'm eager to work with you and just I just think this is a tremendous opportunity to connect with our communities and really understand their needs and their questions about our public safety force. And I just think it's a great opportunity. So thank you, Mayor Lube.
Yeah, thank you both for serving. Is there anything additional?
Thank you for your discussion and your direction.
We don't have any non-agenda items this evening, so we will go to City Manager Reimer for an administrative report.
Well, good evening again, Mayor and Councilors, my teammates and community members. Due to the time of the night and the significance of the conversations you've had this evening, each of your items have been very important. I don't really have much to report other than thank you for a good meeting, and we did give you a one-page police services layout. Some comments were made, so I want to thank our PD teammates, Kathy and others, for pulling this together just to give you that real high-level baseline, and obviously something that we'll build off of. So just wanted to point that out for you as well. And with that concludes my remarks.
Thank you. We don't have any executive session scheduled tonight, and so I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
I move to adjourn.
Is there a second?
Second.
The motion has been moved and seconded to adjourn. Will the city recorder conduct a roll call vote, please?
Council President Hu,
Yes.
Mayor Lube,
Yes.
Councilor Shaw,
Yes.
Councilor Singh,
Yes.
Councilor Wolf.
Oh, yes.
We are adjourned. Thank you so much. Good night, Tigard.